welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Thompson. I am the Director of Education for Oklahoma Contemporary, and we are so happy to have you here tonight. Tonight's program highlights an exhibition that will be ending very soon, so I would feel remiss if I didn't get the chance to tell you that the exhibition Open World, Dealing with the Art of Video Games, closes on the 21st of February. Personally, it sounds like a great Valentine's Day date this weekend. Besides that, I want to make sure I also let you know that on Saturday, we have a really exciting second Saturday coming up. If you've watched any of the ads come through, you've probably seen all of the fun things that will be taking place here, and we will be welcoming back one of our speakers for that night as well, or day, I should say, as well. Our program tonight is titled Unreal, Up Next in Gaming. We want to welcome our guests and panelists to the stage. Our first guest panelist is Linh Terford. We also have Jeff Price, James Simpson, and the conversation will be facilitated by our very own Marie Casimir, the Public Programs Curator. Thank you so much, and enjoy your evening.
Hey, hello. We will unmask. Thank you for being here. My name is Marie Casimir, and I'm the Public Programs Curator. And this is Unreal, inspired by the Unreal Engine, up next in gaming. And so I want to introduce our panelists who are here with us. To my right, Jeff Price. To my left, Linh Terford, and also James Simpson. So just brief introductions about who we have here, but also what inspired bringing this panel together. So we have this wonderful exhibition, Open World, which is a combination. I don't know if anybody has had a chance to view the exhibition, but it's inspired by video games, Zelda, Super Mario Brothers, etc. But what's beautiful is that there are all these indie games that have also inspired the exhibition, as well as contemporary art practices. So everything from digital medium to quilting work, and there's a yarn exhibit. So in various mediums how video games showed up. And what we were interested in is, what are people doing here in Oklahoma City? What is the gaming industry like here? And who are our local makers? And so we wanted to bring together a panel list of developers, designers, and artists. So that's these folks. So we're happy to have a conversation about what's happening locally here in Oklahoma City. So Jeff Price, our first panelist, received his BFA in Visual Communications from the University of Oklahoma, an MFA from Virginia Commonwealth University. Jeff has an extensive background in game design, electronic media, interactive communications, and graphic design. Jeff's experience in design and development of websites and web-based communications, as well as interactive media and CD-ROM projects, led him to launch Price Creative Group in 2000. As principal of PCG, Price has won several industry awards in video, animation, interactive, and print design. And he's also chair of the game design program at the Oklahoma City University. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, Linh Terford is a professional illustrator and concept artist, born in Vietnam and currently residing in Oklahoma City. Linh attended Oklahoma Christian University and graduated in 2019 with a gaming and animation degree, as well as a Dean's Award. And started working as an art director for Trifecta Communications here in Oklahoma City on multiple AR, VR projects. She left the company at the end of 2020 and has been a freelancer since. Her skills range from 2D art to 3D modeling and texturing. She enjoys doing concept art, especially color keys and character creation. And if you bear with me, one more bio. James Simpson has been developing games, websites, and apps for nearly 2 decades. As the founder of Oklahoma City's first game studio, GoldFire Studios, he's led development on a wide range of games on all major platforms, spanning from massively multiplayer to single-player narrative adventures. James is also the founder of Oklahoma Game Developers Meetup, which is a group focused on growing the Oklahoma game development community through learning and networking. Okay, thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'd love to find out a little bit about how you started your career in game design and development. You're an educator, as well as you also consider yourself an artist, Jeff. So share with us, how this came to be and what I like to think of as your origin story.
Thank you. Yeah. Once again, I'm Jeff Price. I really started game design while I was teaching. I had started teaching. I've been teaching now for 31 years, and I started teaching when I was 23. And I started teaching 3D animation and modeling, and we did that for several years until at Virginia Commonwealth University, where I was teaching, we got a virtual reality system. And actually the person who coined the phrase virtual reality, Jaron Lanier, I met him, and he was one that sold us the system. And it was a big system that looked like a refrigerator, and the headset weighed a lot of, like 50 pounds. And, it cost about $180,000 for that piece of equipment. And we experimented through the 90s, and we did a lot of VR, and it was very simple blocks and things like that, but you could pick up blocks and you could move them, and we would make kitchens and stuff like that. But it came out to where, people couldn't afford it, and it really died out. I think we talked a little bit about that VR sort of faded away. And it really, since the resurgence of these headsets, they're now $300, much more fidelity than we even had in the 90s. And so I started to incorporate that more into teaching first at OSU in Stillwater, and then I really jumped into game design about 15 years ago at Sam Houston State. I was in charge of all the game program, and coming back to Oklahoma, I started teaching at Oklahoma Christian, and they wanted me to come up and teach graphic design. I said, I will only come up from Houston if I can teach game design and animation. And they took a risk, and we did it, and we grew a program from about 3 students to, when I left a couple years ago, we had 120 in game design and animation. And then I left and came over to Oklahoma City University, and we've grown from about 1 student now to, I think we have 35 students in gaming and animation in 3 years. So it's something that's definitely coming around, and it's something that most people don't realize, everything you can do in gaming. And so that's sort of my story, is going from university to university and kind of adding on to what my skill set was, and trying to bring that into our community.
Yeah. And I know that your program is, it's within the art, right? So the art department?
That's correct.
Or the art school?
Yeah, and that's unusual. When I first started doing games at Sam Houston, a lot of game design was in computer science, and only in computer science. So if you were an artist, you had to really know C++ or C# or whatever, and that was what you learned to make games. Nowadays, there's so many tools that have come out and that have grown with me even. Unity came out when I first started, and now Unity is a tool that everybody uses for game development. Also Unreal came out. And so a lot of my art students who really don't want to do programming, they will get in and do all what I sort of say is the top of the sink, whereas most programmers are doing the plumbing and how something works and how all the physics work in the game. And ideally, for me, our education system would be programmers and artists coming together and working in teams and creating games together.
Right. And one last question about that. Do you have converts? Do you have people who are in the program as artists who are now I really want to be a developer, and developers who are I want to try see what my art skills are?
Yeah, and it's like any profession. I mean, it's something that you can learn to do. You can learn to be an artist, you can learn to be a programmer, but typically most people are they're gonna dive into something that they really enjoy. So what we call the pipeline of game development has a lot of different jobs in it. And so my role as a teacher is to look at my students and see what position they enjoy doing and what they're the best at and what they can probably get a job doing. And so in that pipeline, A lot of people think that there's not very many jobs, but there are a lot of jobs. And like we talked about before, even the difference between entertainment games and using game engine technology for visualization or television and movie production. So game technology is becoming a lot of different areas. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, there are programmers that minor in game design, and there's some of my students that have computer science minors, but they're rare. I call them unicorns.
Yeah.
Because they're so rare.
I bet. Okay, so Lynn, we move to you, and I'm wondering, what is your origin story in finding your way as you're an illustrator who has found their way into game design, and you were a student of Jeff's at some point, right? That's the connection that we didn't know.
Yeah, so I was born in Vietnam, and I only started doing concept art when I was in high school. So I found this guy, he's just a mentor, I found randomly online, and I went to his class. At that time, I didn't know I can do art professionally. And so I really started from there, and when I hit college, I went to graphic design at first. I really did not enjoy it. It was not for me. So I thought, I really like games. They have to have jobs for people who make games, right? And so I started looking, and I found Oklahoma Christian. I talked to a lot of university, but Jeff reached out to me. He was really friendly about it. And so I thought, well, maybe I can go here. Oklahoma Christian is definitely cheaper than going to LA for school. And so, yeah, that's where I met Jeff. And I graduated 2 years ago, I believe. Yeah, I worked at Trifecta Communications on VR, AR projects, but I quit Trifecta, and now I'm working as a freelancer right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thanks, Lynn. Jeff, how did you start? How did you begin? I'm sorry, Jeff, James. The J's.
2 J names, yeah. So I got started with game development when I was in middle school, just as a hobby. It was sort of a thing where I was playing games on the computer, and I just always felt like I was more interested in figuring out how the game worked rather than how to beat the game. So I started learning how to program and do graphics, and I got a graphics tablet and different things like that. Mainly kept gravitating towards the programming side, but it was just something I was doing for fun. Ended up selling the first game I made, and realized that there could be more to it than just a hobby. So I kept doing it through high school, and then I think it was after my freshman year at OU, I founded GoldFire Studios. Kept working on that through school, still on the side at that point, but it was a business at that point. And once I got out of school, I started working on that full time and building a team, and we've just sort of been slowly growing since then, trying to do bigger and better games with each thing that we've worked on. So it's been roughly about a decade now that I've been building up GoldFire.
That's great. So you sold the first game that you made where you were in high school?
I think I was in 8th grade.
8th grade, okay. Were your parents like, okay, there's a future?
Yeah, it was funny because I had built it not thinking about the money aspect, and
sure, you're in 8th
I just
grade.
got approached. Another games company was interested in the game, and so that sort of opened my eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah, cool. So that leads me to, so when we think about video games and gaming studios and production, the game centers in North America are really based in, think about Montreal and LA, a little bit in the Midwest. I think Chicago has some things bubbling up, and also on the coast, and Austin, right? But you don't think about Oklahoma, So I'm curious as to why you moved here, right? Why you decided to study here and why you decided to make your company here. So the floor is open. Why make here?
Well, I grew up in Mustang, so I mean, for me, it was. I lived in, like I said, I was living in Houston, and Houston and Austin and Dallas were really great places for game development. Were a lot of studios there, but I really missed my family and my niece and nephew growing up. So I moved back to Oklahoma to do that and to teach. So it was an opportunity to teach. So that's why I came back here.
Yeah, I think for me there were sort of two aspects. One was the practical, which Lynn alluded to. The cost of living is really affordable, and so we got an office in downtown and things like that, and we just couldn't have done that in those hubs. But the other aspect is, there's a lot of exciting things going on here, and there wasn't really much of a game development community, and so the idea of somehow helping to grow that and being able to make an actual impact that you couldn't on an already established hub was something exciting for me. And so that's definitely been, a goal that we've done with the studio outside of just what we're, just outside of the business aspect.
Right. And you started OKC Game Developers, right? One of the co-founders. And when did that start? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we started that back in 2013, and it was sort of the same goal, right? Like we didn't know, there was just two of us with GoldFire at that point, and we didn't know anyone else that was doing game development. And so, first of all, we wanted to see if there was anyone else and meet them, and then use that to grow the community. And basically, we just put up a meetup page, and I tweeted it out, and we didn't know if anyone would show up, and I think there were like 50 or 60 people that came to the first meeting, and then it's just grown since then. We've got close to 600 members on our meetup page, and now there's also a sister group in Tulsa that's Tulsa Game Developer Meetup, and so yeah, it's just been exciting to see how that's grown a lot over the years.
And the fantastic thing about that group is that it'll be a group like this, and there's not a large percentage of people that are making games during the day, but they're all sort of home developers, or they're, so it's neat to see that they love developing games so much that they'll come home from work and then start making games.
Right. And Lynn, did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it started out as a hobby for everyone, and it just grew into a business. And I was really excited about the growth in Oklahoma, because honestly, I just stumbled to Oklahoma because
you stumbled from Vietnam?
Yeah, because I was in Vietnam. It's like, Oklahoma, where is that?
It's a web search.
So I was like, well, it worked out.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I want to talk about how the industry has changed a little bit, maybe before we get to your personal works. So we hear about the game developers. Jeff, you've been here for quite some time in the industry. What do you see changing?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things, I think, some factors that are changing. I think one is a lot more people are seeing games as legitimate, as something as something to have a career in, and they see esports and the growth of esports, and you can make money. I think somebody said you could actually make money at it, but before, when you made games, you kind of were on your own in your room, and it was everybody kind of pictures people in the basement making games, where that's not the case anymore. That game technology has grown so much. Like I said, even since I've started in 15 years, the tools that are available now and the things that you can do using real-time technology is incredible. I mean, there's people that are showing stock market reports all in computer environments, in game environments. So, that to me is, I think a lot of people, the biggest growth for me, I would say that people are perceiving it as a really legitimate way to visualize things, either virtual environments or communities or even data, things like that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think, with the pandemic, remote work is obviously transforming things. So like our studio, we have 3 people. We have 2 artists that are out of Europe, totally different time zone and things like that. But, we're seeing a lot of studios doing that. And so it doesn't, going back to the point on the hubs, it's becoming less important to be in those places. You can be wherever you want to be and still be part of a team and things of that nature and create in a different way.
Yeah, and like it used to be like you have to have a settings, a work setup to work with, right? But now with home computers, you can pretty much work remotely, and they can send you the code to the programs that you can use. And I have a friend who works in VFX for LA, and she's all the way in New Mexico.
Right.
And she were able to work just fine.
Yeah. Another thing that's really kind of neat is the software available, as Lynn kind of touched on, is in the past we would buy for our labs, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on software and equipment and things, and most of the game development stuff nowadays, if you're a student or an independent, it's pretty affordable. So you can get programs like Maya and Blender and Unity and Unreal, and you can start creating games at home, even as kids. I've seen kids, 7, 8 years old, and they're working Maya and put it into Unity, and that to me is super exciting. That just that generation of kids that are not really scared of technology, and they have resources available to download, like Lynn said, to a personal computer that can handle it.
Right, and so these are game engines, game creation engines.
Right.
Just for anybody out there who doesn't know.
Yeah,
I've been learning a lot. Well, I want to shift to talk about the art aspect of game design, and Lynn is our resident artist here this evening. So I would love, Lynn, for you to discuss some of your influences and also where you are in your career now.
Right.
I'll give you this clicker. We're hoping should be, there we go.
All right. So to answer your question, my influences kind of varies. Internet, you can just look things up and you have a bazillion of pictures to look at. But if I have to go back to certain artists, I would pick Dean Cornwell, J.C. Leyendecker, Alphonse Mucha, and Bernie Wrighton. And I also have more modern artists like Peter Moorbacher, Ji Liu Liang, Ari Pan, and so on. There are so many out there, but what I respect about these artists is that they were able to use their skills in composition and lighting to tell certain stories. And I want to show you this piece by Evan Cagle. It's just black and white, but if you take a look around, there were so much details, and it's so lively. Another piece here, it's a study by Krenz Kush. You can compare the photo and his rendition, his skill in lighting and composition just really bring the photo to life, and I really enjoy that aspect of his work. And so that brings my personal work. I also try to apply a lot of vibrant colors that I learned from these artists and put into an effective composition. These are my sketches from last year. I did this thing called May Sketch a Day, and every day I drew a picture, so I put up what I like up here, and these are my character designs that I did. On the left side is a an art piece for character design challenge, and the rest is just my personal work. This is all my personal work. I haven't gotten to finish it, but hopefully this year I will. Okay, so let's move on to more professional work. So since in the professional settings, you kind of have a lot of limitation in terms of art direction and resources. When I was working on Viribus, so it's a game for children who have cerebral palsy, and therefore I wanted to make it as simplistic as possible, because at that time there were only 2 team members, which is me and a programmer working on this, so simplicity plays as the key point here. So if you see this concept of the ship, it's not mine originally 100% because I rendered out a 3D model of a ship I've found online, paint over it, and also design the cockpit because that's where the player spend the most time in. And so after I modeled the cockpit out, I started texturing in Substance Painter, and this is how the UI and the layout looks like. And this is the final product. If it plays, it doesn't play. Well, I guess that kind of get the point across. This is another I guess, example of concept art. This is more technical. This is for a trim sheet that I did for the game, which kind of helped me and my team member use less material and shaders for the game in order to boost performance of the game. And so I had to design these out for the game itself.
Wait, say the less, you were using less what?
Materials.
Materials?
Yeah, and shaders.
Okay.
Yep. So if you work in game engine, any game engine, you have to use shaders, but sometimes it really takes a toll on performance, so you have to do shortcuts like these. So next is another game I'm working on called Ancient Gods. It's different, it's a 2D game, but I'm gonna just show you the trailer. Does it play?
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, damn.
It didn't play.
Well, I guess the videos don't play on here. Well, anyway, this is a battle card game. Just think of Yu-Gi-Oh, but you play with AI. Plus gacha game. If you play mobile games, you probably know what I'm talking about. So this game focuses a lot on character design, and therefore I have to tackle it differently. Also, I'm not an art director for this game. I'm going to show you the progress on how I design the characters. And so on the far right is the mood board that the art director sent me. In the middle was my initial sketch, and on the left was the fix she sent me. So I have the tendency to go a little bit too much detail on the character, and so what she did was to simplify the character a little bit to match the aesthetic of the game. And I pretty much got a little bit lucky with this character because my art director didn't fix a lot of it. I just sent her color variations, and she ended up picking the first one, and I just render it out and take small suggestions from her. The next one is different because it's a lower level character. So what the art director wanted from me was a lot of variations of these lower level characters because you encounter them a whole lot. So I sent her a couple of poses. She picked the first one because she thought it would be easier to swap out the weapons, and it's easier to change the color in general for the characters. And so here's my initial sketch to the final version. These are the notes that I took from what she told me. As you can see, it's a little bit too extras, too voluminous. It didn't fit the style, and it's too pointy, and it makes her too aggressive in a way. And so I have to tone down her hair and her clothing and gave her some more variation on weapons. And so here are the final results. And just so you know, these concepts go straight into animators. And so we don't have the 3D step, and therefore I had to cut out the layers like this. Just think of it as paper puppets. And so you have to layer it on top of each other like this.
That's so cool. I love that. I was like, that would have been a great alert for our learning gallery. Like, kids would love to do that, right?
Yeah, it would be fun.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was really beautiful, and I think and enlightening, right? We often see the final product as people who play games and look at animation, but it's rare to be able to see the step-by-step process.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a lot of questions, but we do have a Q&A at the end. So please, if questions are popping up, hold on to them. I think my first question is, how do you rein it in? Because I'm looking at your influences, right? And there's this beautiful, chiaroscuro, drama, and also Art Nouveau, which is crazy and spirally and whimsical. And then you're being asked to sort of make beautiful things, but also you have to rein it in to fit the design. And I'm curious about what's that process like for you?
Man, it's really hard to pin it down because it really varies from one project to another. And I always have a folder of inspiration. And so whenever I go into an art block, I always pull those up and okay, I'm gonna pick this color palette and go from there. Sometimes I would just experiment, as an artist. I like to experiment. And so sometimes I would just have different workflows, and I really like to implement things from other artists because that's what they did too, So Muka, he had a lot of his stuff inspired from cathedral, religious paintings. And I took inspiration from him and took bits and parts of other artists and put it into mine. It's sprinkle salt and pepper and spices.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we're going to move to Jeff's work. In addition to teaching, Jeff has also worked with several different people creating a VR game, right? And so I'll take the clicker. Thank you. Gas and gears. Now for something completely different. You could say.
I actually hate going right after Lynn's stuff. It's so beautiful, and it's Mine, I feel lesser because of it.
Yeah, no, we have like, beautiful, whimsical characters and then gas and
Yeah,
gears
mine
and
is definitely
garage,
not Art Nouveau. Yeah.
right? But you have created this VR game that is a skill building game.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you could talk a little bit about the purpose of the game, and then luckily this is not just a panel, but it's a panel demo, so we're actually going to get to try some stuff. And so
He's going to
Jeff,
start it up.
He's going to start it off. Jeff has a friend.
actually, I might need to start it
And for the folks who are watching at home and streaming with us, you'll also get to see what's in the room, so that's cool. First time we're trying it, so we hope it works. We've tested it.
Yeah, hold on.
So we'll let you get that on and then tell us.
Yeah, I just want to start it up.
Sure.
Okay, I think you're going to have to. Do you know where to find it?
And so
Okay.
in terms of a skill building game, it's a game that is about like motorcycle maintenance, right?
Right, exactly. So I was approached by a company here in Oklahoma City called Occupath, and they were one of the Thunder launchpad companies, and their goal, they got money from the Thunder to start a company that would do training, and really it could be for anybody. And so they've done training for the military, fixing helicopters and everything else. So they came to, a lot of their training had been video-based virtual reality, and they wanted to do a VR, immersive VR. But one of the things that was our, something that we had to worry about was it couldn't be on a PC with a big graphics card and all that. We had to do it on the Quest 2. So we had to really be concerned about how much we were putting in the scene, how much texturing we were doing. It's kind of what Lynn had talked about, sort of the simplicity of the things. And really the goal of these modules, it's not really a game, it's more of a simulation to teach kids that are maybe in detention, or maybe they're in a facility that they want to teach kids to have maybe a new opportunity, a new career, or a new something to if they come out, that they will have a skill set. And so one of the things that we've talked about is, training for HVAC or training, and we thought about maybe small engine repair would be our first couple modules. This would be one out of, say, 20 modules that they could do, and they would have an instructor with them. And so what we decided on was just the first step would be how to change spark plugs on a motorcycle. And really this demo is to kind of show how you could have instructions in the scene. We do a little bit of augmented reality, and as Lynn had talked about, texturing objects and how simplistic we needed to be to have it the ultimate performance on the Quest. So we came up with, I think there's a video that he can show, and so what we did is we got together, and just like James had mentioned, we were all remote, and it was during the pandemic, so it was actually kind of nice to talk and have this sort of regular meeting with people. And there was 4 people on our team. We had 2 programmers and 2 artists, myself and another person.
Gas garage.
And so,
look around and check out my shop.
as you can kind of hear, there's an audio track.
Finished, we can play some.
You can turn that back up if you can.
Okay.
I'm your shop teacher, and we're
Yeah, I
going to
can
be
get it.
learning how to replace spark plugs on a motorcycle. There are several different reasons you
get
might be
off?
replacing the spark plugs on your bike. Some of the common reasons are hard starting or acceleration and rough idling. Motorcycle manufacturers recommend inspecting the plugs every 5,000 miles and
Like a
replacing them every
VOTech
10,000.
kind of a teacher.
Doing this is going to
I
give you a
wanted a
good idea of
voiceover
how your
actor,
motor's
so
running,
I
and
found them
also
on the
help keep
internet,
the motor running
and
at
I
its best.
listened to about
Why
400
don't you pick
people,
which bike
and I
you
finally
want
got
to work on today?
this person to do all the voiceover. So I wrote all the script, and you can, select bikes. And so really I'm just trying to figure out the best ways for navigation, the best ways to have information, to accomplish tasks. Like you couldn't have 5 or 6 tasks. And so we decided we're going to have a tablet. So we actually made a computer tablet in the game that works like a PC. And what's cool is my programmers really got got busy with it, and they could actually run Windows through that in the VR scene. So we were, I was like, no, we don't need all that. So, we were doing just interface design. We were doing, so all of this information, like the sockets and and we just would go through pieces like, should we have that floating in the air, or should you have to hold it the whole time? And so a lot of decisions were being made just in terms of how people even interact in VR versus if you were doing it on your desktop. Like when I'm playing Call of Duty or something like that, I can do everything on my keyboard, but when you're in VR, you sort of want to grab stuff and hold stuff and move, you know what I mean? And so this was sort of the interface that we came up with, which was step by step, and then they would have arrows, and pretty soon you'll see they'll take off the spark plugs and put grease. And so we even did video where they would show you how to do what you were doing in VR. And at the end, I don't know if we'll get to it, but at the end you can even hold up the tablet as an AR device in VR and look at the engine as like a cutaway. So you can kind of show STEM related how the mechanics work and things like that. So, like the little progress bar above the crank, it's like, we're trying to make what would be not right in your face, but still give you feedback on how you're doing things. When you have the ratchet and you're pulling out the spark plug, you actually have to do it. And the programmers calculated exactly how much you would have to do to get the socket out. And so it's actually realistic on how much you would have to crank to pull it out. They'll pick it up, and you can drop it, and all sorts of stuff. I think I drop it one time or whatever, so the physics of, oh my gosh, I got to pick this up and do it again and all that. So while you guys are watching that, and if you can turn the audio, I'll hook it up. Yeah.
Just gotta cast it.
Okay, I can do it.
Turn the audio back on.
It's all pretty dark.
Hey, I don't think you finished that last step.
Oh, he's got it on a separate signal. So I was actually out in my garage going with my phone, trying to record all of the, and certain interfaces didn't work very well. Like when we first started, we had a ratchet diagram that didn't work. And so, it was just, this took us, I think, 6 months to do. And, just trying to get all the interface worked out and get all the models where Chrome looked like Chrome and still was not taking up a lot of memory. So there was just a lot of effort, and I really appreciate the guys I worked with. One was named Adam Libby, another one was Isaac Peterson, and then Evan Barrio was also one of my former students. So, we had a great time and, had a lot of interesting development. And like I said, all remote. We never met once in person. So doing all that in over online. So if you want to switch over,
While he does that, do you know, are they currently using it in detention centers or in different places, or has it not launched yet?
It hasn't launched yet. Like I said, we're going to be doing like 10 of these. So we'll probably do HVAC next.
Okay.
And then I think there's automobile repair. We'll do welding and all those. So there will be a unit of different. And also we're going to be doing where they can track and have if the students are how they're progressing. So, at the very end, you'll see at the very end, once you do it right, then you get a certificate that you can print on a printer. So,
Got it.
So,
are you in there?
Is it casting?
Is that you?
No, that's the video still.
Okay. If we're having connection issues, I think we can move on to James's video and then come back, because we're going to try and use another Oculus at the end, if that's okay. Technology, am I right?
I know.
Yeah,
And, you know, it's like we were doing it an hour before this. It was like, perfect.
I know.
You know, it's funny.
Okay, yeah. We'll move on to James and then try to come back to this so that we can try. Somebody let. So, James, we'll move on to you.
Okay.
If you can talk a little bit about the early stages and concept for Arctic Awakening, and tell us what that is.
Yeah, so the new game that we're working on at GoldFire, it's called Arctic Awakening. That's a screenshot from it there. We've been working on it for a little over 2 years, and it's a single-player narrative adventure game. So it's heavily focused on the story side of things, the choices you make in dialogue and the actions you take. It affects the story and the relationships with the other characters and things of that nature. So the basic premise is you play as Kai, who is an ex-Navy pilot. He has crashed in the Alaskan wilderness, so it's sort of a survival situation. His only companion is a court-mandated therapy robot. So it's sort of a sci-fi scenario. It's set in the year 2062. And the two of you have to go on this journey to find your missing co-pilot who bailed out while the plane was going down. But while you're doing that, you're going to uncover a number of mysteries along the way. And a lot of the things that you encounter aren't necessarily what they seem like they actually are out in this place you find yourself in. So yeah, we've got a trailer to show, and then some behind the scenes in the engine, and some early gameplay to show as well. If we can run that video.
Okay. If you can hear us in the booth.
So, any word on Kai? Or his supposed crash?
Don't, please. Nobody's ruled it a crash anyway. They said it just vanished.
I don't know, sis. Once is bad luck. Twice, well...
It's that damn robot. Always watching him. It's enough to drive anyone nuts.
Yeah, well, short drive at least. Anyway, the whole thing smells off to me. Like a setup.
Oh God. You don't think he couldn't have done this on purpose?
Who knows? I never did understand that kid. Not really.
Well, at least he's not alone this time. Little Charlie and Amelia, though, they've been through so much already.
Maybe they're better off without him.
That's what Kai said the last time we talked, but...
Let's face it, the little brother's pretty messed up. And who the hell knows where it really is right now.
So we're working on this game for PC, Mac, and Xbox and PlayStation. There's a Steam page right now, so if you've got Steam, adding it to your wish list really helps us out. The game's built in Unity, so this is in the game engine, just doing some basic level design work. This is an area you might have noticed in the trailer. But there's also, what I'll show here in a second, a lot of our custom tooling. So a nice thing with the Unity game engine is you can customize it and build tools for your specific needs. And specifically here, we're showing our time of day and weather systems. So the environment is almost like a character in the game. So we spend a lot of time building custom systems for full control over the time and the weather and different aspects like that. But we also built a variety of other tools to rig up the story moments and different things like that. Let's see. Yeah, so this all hooks into basically a weather system. This is some early gameplay. None of this is final, so this is all still being worked on, but this is what the opening scene looks like right now before you've crashed. We'll point out that there's some voiceover here. It's all placeholder voiceover. Unlike Jeff, we haven't finished casting yet, but just having placeholder dialogue is a pretty standard thing to get your systems in place, figure out timing, things like that. But so the whole game is in first person, so you're from the eyes of Kai and can see your full body and whatnot.
Ah, come on. Let's hit it when we get back. You know, break the new place in with some war stories.
So a lot of the gameplay is selecting how you
Done
respond
prepping those supplies?
to other characters.
I'm taking that as a yes.
And those responses will then have
They always
consequences
have
later in the
choice
game.
grub for us vets.
You should consider it. A bit of mingling might be good for you. With you in tow? At a vet bar? They'd laugh me out of the place. Perhaps I could get you special dispensation from the court. I might even be able to watch over your children.
So this is jumping ahead after the crash. We've got a snow system that we put a lot of work into and different elements like that to really create that sort of survival scenario.
I've been watching the tunnel each night since. They go in and out, sometimes carrying things, usually just themselves.
And so this is just some more placeholder dialogue, just giving some ideas about different moods and things like that over some different environments.
I will not let you down. Right this way. I thought I was leading. Oh, I see. Okay, well, right this way then.
And so the whole game world, it exists. It's not going from like scene to scene. It's all in one large contiguous world. And so these are just little snapshots of different areas within that space. And so you'll be able to explore this world and the full storyline plays out continuously throughout the space. So yeah, that's a quick look at Arctic Awakening. We're hoping to release it later this year, and yeah, we're pretty excited with how it's coming along.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. We're really excited. I think we're the first to get a demo. No? Okay.
Yeah, so that's all new stuff. We haven't shown any of we haven't really shown much gameplay at all previously. So we released the trailer about not quite a year ago.
Okay.
And then we've just sort of been heads down working since then.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. One quick question. So you wrote and directed this as well as the lead developer. How do you sort of like reconcile the technical versus the creative? Like we were talking with Lynn a little bit, and you're one person, but you're doing all those things.
Yeah, and we've got a team of we've got a core team of 5, and then we work with a variety of really talented freelancers and contractors for different elements. But yeah, it's definitely one of the challenges with indie development. Everyone on the team sort of wears different hats at different points in time. But for me at least, it's one of the exciting things because it's like every day, every week, it's something new. You're always learning something new, trying something new. And so you get an opportunity to work in all of those different aspects. But yeah, it's definitely tough. For me, it's all about siloing. So like for the writing, it's really difficult for me to mix that in with the technical work. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing a lot of what I call writer's retreats, where I basically get out of town for a week and turn off the phone, no internet, no TV, and just write.
Right.
And that's been a really helpful part of the process for me. But I think that direction is the big thing for any team. You need to have someone who like owns the vision and can make sure everyone is pointed in the same direction, basically, even with a small team like what we have.
Cool. Thanks so much, James. I think, are we ready-ish? We can try, and if not, we'll go to audience questions. So we'll do a little bit of Q&A if you have questions. Hopefully you do, and so we'll try to get that up. And actually, while you pull it up.
Family room TV.
We live in the living room. And then while you switch that up, if anybody has questions, we have. Okay.
So, just having instructions and a start and, how to, like I said, these are the things I try to teach my students is, helping the user become part of what they're trying to accomplish. And there's nothing more frustrating when you're in a situation and something doesn't work or doesn't do what you're expecting it to do. And so trying to program all that, and James probably knows, and Lynn as well, that it's a tough thing, and to do it in VR is even tougher. Go ahead and go into the start. It doesn't have the audio playing over it. It does cast to it, but so we want to do a different sort of selection. So instead of the average menu, you select the bike that you want to work on. And so, you can point the controller at a different bike, and it makes like the chopper makes a certain rumbling noise. Right now, he's hearing the teacher kind of telling what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be learning. So I've always been told, you tell a student what they're going to learn, then show a student what they're learning, let them try to do it, and then review what you've done to make sure that they have understood it. So there was a lot of trying to sync up when those audio cues would happen. If somebody wasn't doing something in a certain amount of time, the teacher will come in and tell you, oh, are you having trouble with that? Hey, maybe look to your right. There's the thing that you're looking for over. Yeah, it froze. So, like I said, it's technology. This is how technology works. But it's one of those things that I really love doing it, and I love figuring out sort of all these different situations, and then once again bringing that back to my students and letting them kind of work. So, yeah, we don't have to do it. I mean, they saw the video, so it's all right.
Okay, are we ready for our questions? Who has a question for Jeff or Lynn or James?
Hello, this is for James. I noticed on your website, GoldFire Studios, you had a lot of different types of games. I believe one was like you had a poker, you had different styles of game, and Arctic Awakening was totally different from a lot of the styles that you already had, and seemed almost a step out of the comfort zone. How did you come up with this idea, and how do you determine what direction your studio is going to go when it comes to game development and style?
Yeah, so it's sort of a 180 from the stuff we've done before, and with each game that we've done, we've always tried to do something different from what we've done before, because we like to push ourselves. But basically, our process on the last 2 games we've done is we basically do like an internal pitch day, basically, within the team. So everyone over 4 to 6 weeks will come up with a bunch of game ideas, and then we'll have a day where everyone pitches those ideas to the rest of the team, and we'll sort of whittle that list down and categorize them and things like that. We will put sort of, I guess, boundaries on that to an extent, but So, in this last round, we knew we wanted to do something heavily narratively focused, primarily because we'd just been doing all multiplayer games and we wanted to do something different. But we didn't necessarily limit ourselves to that. That's just sort of, we had sort of inspiration on the narrative side, and we felt like we were at a point where we could do that. I think it's sort of counterintuitive. A game like that is actually a lot more difficult to put together than like the multiplayer games we'd been doing. So it was just an area for us to grow as a team, basically.
Okay, we have one more question.
This question's for Jeff. I remember at the very beginning you talked about VR and how it had a moment back in the 90s but then fell off, but it's now having resurgence. What other trends do you see coming back in gaming?
Can you say that one more time?
A little bit louder,
closer
yeah.
to the mic?
Sure. I forgot about
There
the
we go.
mask. All right, yeah, in the 90s, you said that the VR was having a moment where it was becoming popular, and there was lots of buzz, but it went away because of the price, and interest was lost, but it's made a resurgence now in our modern age. What other trends in gaming do you see coming back from the past?
That's a good question. Actually, that's a great question. I think, I started doing gaming when there was Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and those kinds of things, where it wasn't really a narrative. It was sort of your twitch skill. I mean, how fast you could move a joystick, those kinds of things, how fast you could push a button. Then we moved into really programs like Myst and those really led to a lot more storytelling in games. And then we moved from there really to Call of Duty and a lot of first-person shooters and a lot of action. And I think now we're moving more towards storytelling again. I think like you can just see, I love the fact in James's demo there that all the people that worked on the team comes up almost like a movie sequence. Like that's a really neat touch. And I think a lot of my students really enjoy games that have storylines, and they prefer that a lot more than maybe. I think Call of Duty and those types of games are still popular, but I think you're starting to see much more of this connection with, okay, how can I build a game that's going to last and have multiple games come from that? I don't know if that answers your question well, but I think that's, and I think VR has came back around because the equipment has become cheaper to use, and I think people are starting to want that escape. They've been in their houses, they've been in rooms, and they're wanting to go to Paris, and they can't. I actually, which was very cool, I had a pair of HoloLenses, and I went and saw Machu Picchu in this demo that they had on the HoloLens. 2 years later, I went to Machu Picchu in person, and I had this weird, like, I've been here before experience. And I had never been there. But I had been there so many times in that demo that I knew where a certain restaurant was. I knew how to get to the top of the mountain to see, Machu Picchu. And so this sort of escapism, I think, is bringing back virtual reality. And what the new thing is going to be called is the metaverse. And the metaverse is, the biggest trend is going to be, you won't play a game like Call of Duty. You're going to go to the metaverse, and it's going to be one big game. The whole world will be a game, almost like Ready Player One. And you'll take tools from one game and go take it, or maybe a character you love in Final Fantasy, and you'll take that character and go play that in The Last of Us, right? And so there will be blurring of these lines of what a game is, and your game might be inclusive of a lot of different elements. It may be training, it may be fun, it may be educational. You may go to college in the metaverse at some point.
Wow, I feel like I'm not ready for the metaverse.
But art is exciting.
It's here.
Art is
exciting, right?
I mean, imagine being able to go and see dancers dancing,
right.
Going to an opera, going and feeling like you're really there, and all that is very immersive.
Yeah, especially as we were just talking about, how did we cope when we were in lockdown, right? Especially for like embodied performers. So there's a whole new world that we can explore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Another question? Ooh, lots of questions.
I have a question for you, Jeff. So how much did you know about motorcycles before creating the game, and like how much did you learn along the way?
That is a great question, and I got a perfect answer. About 2 or 3 years ago, I found a car that my parents had had when they were 20 and they wrecked it, and I wanted to redo it. I knew nothing about cars, and so I actually got online to YouTube, and I typed in, how do you fix a car? Like this particular car, and I got into some forums, and they started telling me how to do it, and I would go out and fix it and things like that. So I had some experience with car repair. I've never driven a motorcycle, I've never ridden a motorcycle, but doing that sort of research where I could have people that could advise me on how to do that. And so it's funny that while I'm doing it, I'm learning myself to teach somebody. And that's what I love about art, is that when you have a client, especially commercial art, you learn a lot of things about their industry. If I go do an oil and gas, one of my students has done a lot of oil and gas 3D. I'm sure he learned more about oil and gas than everybody in the room, because you're kind of thrown in there. You're helping this other entity visualize something for their clients or for students or for kids. And so you have to take it in, synthesize it, create this thing, and like with beautiful artwork, so that it's understandable and enjoyable. I always tell people there's 3 main things: appropriateness, effectiveness, and engagement. And so teaching myself how to do that motorcycle, I had to be appropriate to how it worked. I had to do the right things like adding grease onto the spark plugs and stuff. But I also wanted to be engaging, so you can kind of see the fan moving in the background. There's a lot of principles of animation that go into not having a scene that's static. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes on, you're right, and just kind of creating something for somebody else. Yeah, good question.
I think we have.
Hey guys, this is for everybody or anybody who wants to answer, and this is more about the direction of the industry. How do you guys feel about the monopolization of the gaming industry right now, and how do you feel like that impacts not only like users but like developers? Because when you take someone like Microsoft that can buy anybody at any time and then make it a pay-to-win game, what does that do?
I mean, I can answer, but I don't want to dominate the conversation.
Yeah, I think from an indie developer perspective, it's concerning, but it still remains to be seen. I mean, I know there's positives potentially, especially, I mean, we're looking at it on like the streaming perspective. It seems like, or not the streaming, but well, that could be one as well, but the like Games Pass, the subscription-based approach. And, you know, there's potential positives to that. And I think that's especially in Microsoft's case, that's driving a lot of that. But from the perspective of smaller narrative-based games versus, you know, shifting the incentive to making it to where you never stop playing the game for that model to work, that part of it is a little concerning from my perspective.
Yeah.
I still think, personally, indie games are growing. So, you know, big company buying up other smaller game companies are not so much of a concern. I would think of it as a local business, whereas Jeff here, he does his own thing locally for the people around him, and James does his own thing within his group. And so I don't think that's happening anytime soon when you have so many people doing so many different things.
I personally just have a problem with, you know, people being able to come into a game that have more money and therefore they have more advantage, right? I mean, that to me is sort of the problem, is that becomes a stratosphere of things for people that maybe don't have the type of income that other people have. And games shouldn't really be that way. I mean, games, for me personally, somebody shouldn't be able to come in and pay their way to level 150. they should do it like everybody else, right? So that to me, it's just a game mechanic issue for me.
We have one question in the back.
James, what was your inspiration for Arctic Awakening?
If you could say that louder one more time, what was your inspiration for what?
What was your inspiration for Arctic Awakening?
Can you hear it?
Yeah, what
was your inspiration for the game? Yeah.
Oh, for Arctic Awakening. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's sort of an idea that's been rolling around for a long time, but I guess sort of the seed of the idea was to have a survival situation story that seemed like one thing and really was something completely different. And then it evolved from there, but a lot of as I talked about, we do internal pitches, and so a lot of the ideas that we started with were just sort of seeds of ideas, and then from there, we spent probably 6 months just iterating on that idea, throwing out different ideas, the path where it went all over the place before we sort of landed on what it is now, and there's elements of that are still changing. Just this week at our weekly meeting, we were talking about a new idea for, well, I don't want to say what it is, but it's an aspect in the story that, it's not a major change, but it's a tweak that can affect things later on, and so that stuff keeps evolving throughout the development process.
Thank you. And I think this will be okay, we have 2 more questions, and we'll wrap up questions. Yeah.
Okay, now, genres are important when it comes to game developing, and I'm kind of curious about something. This is kind of a 2-in-1 question, if you don't mind. What do you think is your favorite genre, and what do you think is the hardest genre to develop? If you know what I'm trying to say here. This is to anyone who wants to answer, by the way, just to make it clear.
I would say, from my experience, which is less than these 2, I would say 2D games is more budget-friendly. 3D games are a lot harder because you need an experienced programmer to work around 3D for one. For a second, you also need extra artists to do 3D work for you. And what else? I guess narrative games, like what James is doing, is also very hard because the moment you put characters in, it's like so hard to do because you have to animate the body, you have to get the character to interact with other characters and different things in the world. And so I would say those are the hardest. And if it's multiplayer with other characters, that's like 10 times worse.
Right. I would say my favorite is probably first-person FPS. Personally, I like that just because I like military and things like that. But I think I agree with Lynn that probably narratives are very tough because pace is important, and getting that right and getting the timing right for somebody not to get bored or not to go too fast is tough. I think one of the easiest ones personally, and I have some students in the back of the room that are probably going to laugh, but the horror genre, the horror, like survival horror, to me would be the easiest because you just have stuff come and get you, right? Just program all the AI to try to get you, and that's the, I'm just teasing. There is a lot to that too. There's a lot of storytelling in that too. So, and surprise and things like that. So, that's for me. I would say probably the easiest would be, for me, maybe a platformer. a typical platformer. But to do it different than everybody else would be hard. But if you want just to make a game, you can go home right now and go to flowlab.io and make a little platformer online.
Yeah, I think Jeff sort of nailed it there. Is like I don't know if it's necessarily genre. You can make any genre really complex to build, especially if you're wanting to do something unique, which, if you're doing something fairly standard, for example, with Unity or Unreal, you've got the asset store. And so you can sort of piece things together that have already been done. But if you're doing something unique, I saw a tweet recently that sort of went through the steps of setting up a door in a game, which seems like, but players would just assume that's nothing. But a door, just being able to walk through a door is incredibly complex, and there's so many things that go into that and so much testing required for that. So the most mundane things can be really complex.
And final question?
Yeah. The question I had was just, you three being from Oklahoma, how have you seen the gaming community, like game devs, esports, whatever, grow, and how do you see it growing? Will it get bigger?
Well, for me personally, I mean, the fact that we're at the museum, the Contemporary Museum of Art, talking about video games, it's exploded in Oklahoma City. I mean, when I first came here, as James had mentioned, everybody were kind of on our own islands, doing things, and the fact that James made a group together that we could all come together and meet each other was fantastic. The fact that we could start university programs to teach people how to make games, and you can go to OCCC, you can go to OC, OCU, Tulsa University. All of us have game, and OSU now is about to start a game program. And the fact that Lynn would come from Vietnam to our state to learn how to do video games tells you a lot, that we're starting to make a little bit of noise in terms of games. Our schools in Oklahoma have been on the best game development list for the Princeton Review for the last 12 years. And so, that's 50 schools out of, if you can imagine, hundreds of schools all over the country. Out of 50, we've made those lists for the last 10, 12 years, 13 years. So that's impressive, yeah.
And you and I had a conversation about XR Studios as part of the film industry and melding game design in the film industry. And we have a really burgeoning and growing film industry here in Oklahoma.
Right. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Prairie Surf downtown and those studios, but the big thing now is this. In the past, we would do an animation and you would render it to film and then that would be done. Now, my students are rendering their animations in game engines because they're real time and the lighting is beautiful. So even in animation, what they did in Star Wars, they used a bunch of machines and rendered it out and it was done. Now you could do the movie Star Wars all interactively. You can either watch it or you could be interacting with characters in the animation. So that's what's kind of cool, is that there's this blending. And one of the things is XR. If you guys haven't heard of it, that stands for extended reality. So you have virtual reality, which is VR. You have AR, which is augmented reality, where you can see the world, and then there's a 3D element in it that looks real, like this cup would be an AR kind of thing if it wasn't real, but it looks like it's in a real environment. And then XR means extended reality, which means there's a mix, or some people call it mixed reality, where you don't know if you're in a virtual environment, if you're in a real environment, or whatever. And so these filmmakers have now decided that they create these curved, seamless television sets. They're really big, and they're seamless. And then they use game engine technology to make all the sets in the background. So in the past, if somebody had, The Mandalorian, had a chrome suit, if they were on a green screen and they were filming and then they were going to put them into a computer environment, you would have to key out the green and then all the green that was reflecting in the uniform, which was very, very difficult and took a long time. Now, they can do these big sets that are round, have virtual environments, and they even have TV sets that are mounted above you that do sky. And so all of that's being reflected, say, in that metal suit, and you don't have to do any post-production on that. So it all looks real. So television commercials, when you see somebody on a motorcycle, there might be in a virtual set. So that virtual production is probably one of the largest growing in. We have about 2 or 3 new film companies here in Oklahoma. They're looking for people that know how to do that kind of stuff. And so, this is the kind of stuff that we want to do at Oklahoma City University.
Yeah, thank you. And then any final thoughts?
I guess I can bounce off from that, and that it's not only that you can do VFX real time, you can also use mocap to act real time in those environments, and that's so impressive to me. It's just mind blowing because a few years ago you have to do mocap, you have to bring it in to Maya and render it out. And everything just took so long, but now you can just do everything real time now.
Sure.
It's just crazy.
And mocap is motion capture, where you have the suit with the dots all over it.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for the folks who are out there in streaming world. We do have a little bit of an additional demo to do. You can hang out if you're in streaming world, and you can most certainly hang out here. Kahui, would you like to come up and present? Kahui Kanahale is our manager of teen programs, and we are having a second Saturday event here on Saturday, run by our youth and family, and it's virtual world, so we're continuing the theme. And one of the activities they'll have is tilt brush?
Yes.
Right? So I'll let Kahui talk about it.
If any of you want to stay and try out tilt brush, I'll bring out a VR headset here in a second. And you can see kind of what we're going to do that day. So I'm going to go grab it.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling a little nervy.
Yeah. So audience participation, if you like what you saw and you want to put on a VR headset and test out some things, please feel free to stay. Otherwise, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to Jeff and Lynn and James. I feel like this work is not only like really exciting and cool, but it's really beautiful and gorgeous, and fits right within the theme of how we're thinking about all of the different aspects that go into making a video game. When you see the final product, man, there's a lot of work, right? And a lot of creativity that has occurred before you get to play the game. So thank you again, and have a good night, everybody, and hang out and play if you want.